Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us.
Hello and welcome to Tuesday Night Mania, brought to you by Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am host Big B. Ace is backstage, just take care of some things, and he'll pop on here and there. We are joined tonight by Will from Top Row Collectibles. How you doing, Will? How you doing, Will?
I couldn't hear you for a second. Finally, I got the volume to work. So
Gotcha. All right, below me we got Joe. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good, man. It's glad to be back on here. It's been a couple weeks for me.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks for all of us, so we got things coming up. But we've also got a very special guest. You guys, if you watch the show, you've seen his comments on scrolling by. Thomas Burnett from Thoughts College Anywhere. How you doing, Thomas?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Welcome, Thomas. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, very, very
Thanks
glad
for
to
having
have
me.
you. Yeah. So, all right. So let's get into it, guys. Our first topic. We're just gonna kind of recap the wrestling world over the last few weeks, and I'll start with Joe. So, Joe, what's been going on in the wrestling world?
Well, one of the main stories is right now is about the NWA and Nick Aldis leaving the NWA, saying it's a toxic workplace and that it's not a product that he is comfortable with right now. And everybody talking about how Tyrus is the new NWA world champion, and how Billy Corgan didn't want to do Empower with the women because he says he doesn't have enough great women, which rubbed a lot of those women the wrong way. So that's kind of the big news. I mean, I watch NWA on YouTube. I don't subscribe to it or anything, but I mean, what I see is what I see. It's an old school wrestling thing. But for Aldis, who's been kind of the face for the company since it's been rebooted by under Corgan there, for him to leave says a lot, you know. So the big thing is where he's going to wind up next. I know he's talking about doing something with Karrion Kross, and I think there's some good feuds in there. I think with Triple H and under the helm and him coming in. Aldis also talked about how he would like to go to NXT. He doesn't care. He just wants to be on television and have matches and enjoy it. So that's one of the big news coming out of the sports world this week or last week.
So, Joe, let me ask you this. How much of Nick Aldis wanting out of NWA and wanting to move to another promotion, possibly for a larger paycheck, do you think has to do with Mickey planning on retiring?
Well, I think he talked about in an interview that I watched that he was talking, or Corgan was talking to Mickey about something and it was about Empower, and he didn't think that it would get back to Aldis, which was crazy because you obviously James and Aldis is going to talk about things and how kind of saying the women wrestling wasn't up to par to where he wanted to put on a show and didn't think they can handle it. That kind of set Aldis the wrong way. So, I mean, with her retiring or eventually going to retire, as we know, I think that sets it up. And like Aldis says, he goes, I made good money with NWA, not the best money, but I made very good money. And this is not a Harley Race product, which kind of threw people off. But it took a lot for Harley Race because he didn't want nothing to do with the NWA for the longest time. And it took a long time with Aldis and them to get Harley to come around and join back up with the NWA. So
why do you think, Joe, you and I, Big B, historian, we've all been watching for a long time. Why do you think Harley didn't want anything to do with the NWA for a long time? What is your opinion on that?
My opinion was, based upon what I heard and seen on there, was, he just didn't like the wrestling product. He didn't like the shenanigans. He didn't like what wrestling was becoming and what the NWA and all that was becoming. He was old school, and that's what he wanted, and that's what he liked about the NWA. When it stopped doing it, he didn't want no part of it.
My opinion on that whole thing was, you're speaking, you said it kind of hit the nail right on the head. He was old school, where, with the old school NWA, they had a board, a committee. a championship committee where they would take votes, on who was going to be the champion and what product was going to be put out, what product wasn't going to be put out. But when NWA kind of merged and was bought, pieces of it were bought by WCW, the library, and some of the talent, and the merge of the belts and all that stuff, 1990, 1991. I think a lot of those guys that got signed over in WCW really had a bad taste for the old school NWA because they didn't feel like the new way of doing things under an executive producer, a president of a company, a vice president, a lot of the guys that they put in to kind of run the wrestling product itself, they weren't happy with that, especially Ric Flair. And it's very well documented later on with Ric Flair and Eric Bischoff and some of the other things. So, I kind of think it had more to do with that than it did with the kind of reemergence of the NWA. But I think personally, the whole Nick Aldis thing has a lot more to do with, it's a lot easier to make it in today's world with two paychecks than it is one. With Mickey going to retire, I think it has a lot more to do with I need a bigger paycheck. And to get a bigger paycheck, you've got to go to one of the big boys. NWA is a great product. It's a really good show, but it's just not one of the big boys. It's probably the fourth largest wrestling company out there, not really even in the top three, because really you got WWE, you've got AEW, and then you've got Impact. And, let's face it, in reality, how much was all this really making in NWA? 50, 60, 70,000? I mean, I don't think he was making,
I think low six figure. I mean, 100,000, if that.
maybe that, and a lot of the kind of, I don't want to say, I'll call them developmental talent. A lot of the developmental talent are working on 250,000 a year plus in WWE, and it's a whole lot easier to make things work when you're making 250 a year versus 100 a year, and you just lost your wife's salary. So I think a lot more of it had to do with that. Also too, he was world champion off and on for a while, and
he carried the company.
Yeah, and losing that title sometimes, look at Bret Hart. Bret Hart talks about, how his personality was. He really believed he was the champion. And Shawn Michaels used to make fun of him for it and say, you really believe you're this champion. You really believe this company is all here for you. And that's not necessarily the way it is sometimes. So it almost makes you wonder if he was so into his character that he believed he was the champion and then having to drop it. Now, putting it on Tyrus, I think is great because I think Tyrus has been overlooked for a long time. Tyrus, I think, did a great job as the TV champion, and I'm really excited. And I know Tyrus is not very well liked because of some of his political views outside of wrestling. He's a correspondent or an anchor on the Greg Gutfeld show that comes out on Fox News. And I think a lot of people are opposed to him because of his, political beliefs. But in reality, I think he's a very well-deserving champion, and he looks damn good with the NWA title. What do you think, historian?
I agree. Tyrus is going to make a good champion in the NWA, and who knows what's going on with all this. He's coming off as a bitter old man.
Yeah, kind of like Brett. Kind of like Brett, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I love
Aldis
Brett,
also
but yeah,
said
Brett's way better.
Yeah. What do you think, Big B?
Aldis, I mean, I think, God, I can see him going both places. I can see him going WWE. I can see him go to AEW. I think AEW needs him more than WWE does. But I mean, if he goes for the money, WWE can offer him a lot more, I think. So, but yeah, for him to leave NWA, promotion that he's had on his back for a while.
Let's be honest. He knows somebody that he's very close with that worked there for a very long time. Mickey worked there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I think he has an opening to go in because
no doubt he does have an opening going, and like Joe said, he doesn't mind being on NXT.
Yeah, not that he's not talented, but I think it doesn't hurt being married to a former 5 or 6 time women's champion in WWE. So and also too, I think somewhere along the way, they feel like they may owe her a favor because of the way they kind of exited her out.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop up anywhere.
No, I wouldn't be surprised to see him on there either. I think I don't think personally WWE needs him. I think AEW needs him more than WWE needs him. But like you said, he's got the opening there and he's got the connections, and that's where I would put my money on that he would be at.
And he also talked about how he was tired of doing stuff for Billy Corgan and not getting paid for it. Like all that 10 pounds of gold stuff that he was promoting with Cody and all that, he was doing that on his own time and not getting a dime for it.
Yeah.
He talked about how Corgan didn't want to deal with Thunder Rosa, and as we know, that was a big stink in the NWA, and he made Aldis do it, and Aldis felt uncomfortable. He's like, "This is not my job. This is your job as the owner. I'm just a wrestler."
Yep.
And
but now
he called Thunder and said, "Hey, Billy wants you to get a hold of him."
Now we kind of see why, though, with Thunder. Thunder's had problems in AEW too.
Well, yeah, and he's like, hey, Billy wants to get a hold of you. I'm staying out of this. Please give him a call, and left it as that. And then they would pull Aldis into like meetings and say, Aldis, what would you do in this situation? And he said, man, it's a tough for me because I'm a performer, but you also want my opinion. Saying that, you took the title off me and the ratings went down a little bit, but now what can we do to get the ratings back? Well, you need to kind of put the title back on me. So it's a double-edged sword. He's going to get hit with, you just want the title type thing. So he said, he had a tough time there towards the end because they kept pulling him in when he didn't want to be pulled in because he knew of the backlash that was going to happen because Billy being a owner, but not being a Vince McMahon owner, being hands-on, was relying on everybody else to make those decisions. And he said that was where the toxic relationship was starting to come in at.
Yeah.
Ed Buckler in the chat room puts in the chat, Aldis and NXT would be awesome. AEW would ruin them. And I kind of agree with that.
I don't think he needs to go to AEW. I think AEW's talent is just overloaded, as we've talked about 20,000 times. It's just AEW needs to do their thing. Nick can go there, make some money, have some really good matches with some guys, get a WrestleMania payday.
Yeah.
I think he'll be in the Rumble.
Maybe.
Well, technically his contract is up July or January 1st, 2nd, somewhere in there. So
December 30th, yeah. He's a free agent as of today.
The historian brings up a great point, Big B, talking about the Rumble. One of the things we wanted to make sure we mentioned tonight was that fake Rumble sheet.
Yeah, we could definitely go into that right now. Roger Cooper said that he wouldn't mind seeing Aldis go into New Japan.
But really quick, going back to Corgan, he wasn't even at the pay-per-view or TV tapings this last weekend.
No,
he had a Smashing Pumpkins concert to do, but he couldn't do it anyway because he was sick. But what kind of owner misses a big pay-per-view? Could you imagine Vince McMahon like booking a dinner somewhere? Well, he's at on WrestleMania Sunday.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous, right?
Yeah, Vince would never do that. But that's the difference between being a wannabe promoter and a real promoter.
Well, there's no promoter in the entire world like Vince McMahon, and y'all can argue, anybody can argue that, but even in any sport anywhere, there's no one as dedicated to promotion as Vince McMahon was.
No,
100%. I listened to a Jack Doan interview last night, and Jack Doan said,
I would go Jerry Jones as big as Vince.
Yeah, true.
Maybe as big, but no one bigger, I don't think.
Yeah.
So maybe as big, but I mean, think about it. I mean, there's nobody out there that puts in the work that Vince does, especially at 70. What is he, 77, Thomas?
Yeah, like 77, 76, yeah.
Well, Jack Doan brought up on an interview last night. He's like, Vince was working on Christmas and had an idea, and he called one of the referees, and the referee was like, Vince, it's Christmas. Nobody's working on Christmas. Vince is like, I'm working on Christmas.
Yep.
So you have to work type thing,
Exactly.
All right.
Rumble sheet, right?
Yeah. So Monday, somebody leaked it. Don't know if it's real or fake. The Rumble sheet order, the participants, If anybody hasn't seen it, you probably find it. There was.
I have not seen it, so this is news to me.
Oh yeah, it was. I posted in the chat. So they got the 30 superstars in there. They got Cordova jumping in. Jay White. They got Cena and Brock Lesnar as the guys outside of SmackDown, NXT, or Raw. They put on the bottom here that it was supposed to be CM Punk, but he's gonna get attacked by Lesnar, and that's how Lesnar becomes the 30th participant. We got Cody Rhodes winning, and eliminating 3. I mean, Will, what did you think of the list? I mean,
Well,
what did
I
you?
think it's bogus. So first of
Yeah.
all, it's already mid-November. We're nearly late November, and I don't think you see Cardona in the Rumble. As far as Jay White, absolutely, I don't think there's any issues there. I think he could easily come over and jump in the Rumble. Punk, I think, is still under contract and has like 2 years under contract.
Yeah.
So he has 2 years to sit at home where he can't go to WWE. So why he would even be on that sheet, it makes me think it's totally bogus. And then Punk, of all people, would never, ever, ever allow himself to be attacked outside the ring and not make an entrance in the Rumble, because I think he's probably one of the most selfish people out there. So I don't foresee that at all. So I'm calling it bogus. As far as Cody winning it, I think there's a really good possibility.
Yeah.
I think Brock will be in it. I don't think Brock will win another one, but I definitely could see Cody winning it because for some reason they got this big push behind Cody. But Cody's always been injury prone too. And I think that would hurt Cody in a big title run because, the guy was in there for what, 1, 2 pay-per-views, 2, maybe 3 pay-per-views. And then all of a sudden he tore his pec, and the guy's injury prone. He's always been injury prone, so he can win the Rumble, but he'll probably be injured in the Rumble, and then he'll be out until WrestleMania. So there's always that possibility. But I'm personally going to call the Rumble sheet that's out there dancing around bogus, and even if it wasn't bogus, by the time these companies know this stuff before any of us know this. They all get press releases and press briefings all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So once they saw that, Triple H would have changed everything on that sheet anyway, just to keep people guessing. So I say it's bogus. What do you say, Thomas?
I don't think Hunter's thought that far ahead yet for the Rumble. Who's going to be in it? The only thing we know is Cody's probably going to win it. That's the only thing that we can kind of guarantee, unless something crazy happens. But that sheet's totally bogus. We don't know what Matt Cardona's contract status is with Impact. I don't see Jay White coming in. He has that big match with Okada at the Tokyo Dome, but could he come in as IWGP champion, or is Okada getting the belt back?
But
I don't see Jay White coming in.
But he could come in for a night, for a payday, and then go back out. Look at Mickey James last year.
Well, he could because of Carl Anderson's in New Japan run right now. He's got to go over there in Tokyo and defend the championship. So there could be some working relationship there with WWE. But as far as Jay White being a full-time WWE wrestler, that won't happen until after January 31st when all those New Japan contracts are up for grabs.
Yeah. The couple things that jumped out at me that, I don't think is, good roster and stuff, but, your first 2 competitors, Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins, both going about an hour that they're projecting. You only got 2 NXT guys on here, Carmelo Hayes and Breaker, which, typically they have 3 or 4, but, who knows?
God, I couldn't watch Riddle for an hour.
Yeah, no kidding.
Where's all the legends? Because they always bring out 3 or 4 legends,
Well, would that be? I guess you're considering Cena and Brock Lesnar legends. I guess.
Well, wasn't it supposed to be 40 men this year? Isn't that the rumor?
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, I heard something about that too. That would possibly
Crispy Bacon behind the scenes said the same thing. But hold on a second. Are we really at the point where we're referring to Brock Lesnar and John Cena as legends? Are we really? Are we at that?
I'm just.
Are they legends?
They've been around 20 years, so.
I know, but still, I know we're getting old, but I didn't think we were getting that old.
No, they got Hall of Fame status. I don't think they're at the Legends mark yet.
Yeah.
Neither one of those are Hall of Famers yet, though.
No, I totally agree. I don't think. I mean,
As far as CM Punk goes, he's under contract with AEW.
yeah,
If they do release him, which has been the big topic of discussion, whether they do release him, there's going to probably be a major lawsuit. And if they do release him, it's going to be in the contract that he can go anywhere he wants other than the WWE. So,
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it'll be a
no
non.
compete clause for him.
yeah, that's what they're saying, that even if they do, it will be, you can go anywhere other than WWE. But I don't know about that. I just don't know if AEW wants to go down that lawsuit, because we know how Punk is. He loves to sue people.
If we look in the chats real quick, though, we got Robert Burke coming in with "Oh my God, Riddle sucks," and Randy Cox coming in with "Yes, Riddle does suck." So
Well,
those
no,
are
We're talking about
Randy
injuries, man.
Cox,
Let's
Dragon
talk about
Viper,
Randy Orton.
he's the CEO and president of the RK Bro fan club. So I think he's just upset that they don't have the tag titles. I think.
Well,
So.
Randy
Yeah,
Orton just had back surgery today, posted on Instagram with him and his wife celebrating their 7-year wedding anniversary with him in the hospital. So,
Oh, is that what it
he
was?
won't be at
Oh,
the
Yeah.
that
Rumble.
sucks. I mean,
So he's not in the Rumble. So there goes that
Yeah.
shit now totally null and void because he's on that list.
I think the one thing we can almost put money on is that if Cody's healthy, he's going to win the Rumble. I think,
That's his to lose.
Yeah.
And Charlotte wins the women's Rumble, and she goes on to face Bianca at WrestleMania.
That's a possibility. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. So, another big rumor out there, swirling around, and is Triple H has a plan in place for Roman to drop one or both of the belts. Who do you think Roman will lose to, and how would you book it? So, historian, I know you guys probably talk about this on Thoughts Count Anywhere once in a while, but how would you guys think? How would you take the belts off of Roman?
Well, the plan was apparently for at Clash of the Castle was Riddle to cash in on one of the belts, and then Theory was also not Austin Theory. Tyson Fury was going to knock Theory out, but I don't know. I mean, I think Cody's just going to win the undisputed belts because I don't see any way how it would make any sense for Roman to give up the belts. It would kind of make him look dumb to just say I'm giving up one of the belts.
Okay. Will, what do you think?
I've been saying it for months and months and months. I think they've got to find a way quickly to get rid of one of them and let them go into the main event of WrestleMania. Win or lose doesn't matter, but I think he needs to go into WrestleMania with one title, and that other title needs to be on somebody else. So you have two championship matches. This year having the Brock versus Roman, they both were champions, but you really missed out on a huge opportunity for a second big main event where you could have had Roman as a champion, Brock as a champion. They both could have faced different opponents, and you're really missing out by not moving that belt. And I've been saying this for months too, that I think Cross is the one that needs to take one of those belts. And then, whether you put, the other one on Cody or whatever you do. But here's the thing. If Roman still has the belts and Roman's supposedly facing The Rock and Cody wins the Rumble to face Roman for the titles, you can't have the main event being Roman versus Cody and Roman versus The Rock. So, somewhere along the lines.
Night 1, Cody versus Roman. Night 2, Roman versus Rock.
But it wouldn't make any sense if you had him drop the belts to Cody on the first night. Then it wouldn't be believable that he would have any chance against The Rock if he got beat by Cody.
Rock could always interfere and cost him the belts.
True, but
I don't need those belts. I just want you one-on-one.
True, but I just don't see that. I think somewhere along the way, you still got to have them lose a title and then lose a title. I don't think you lose them both at the same time. And I noticed too, they haven't done anything at all with redesigning a new belt to be the one and only undisputed champion. There's rumors that Triple H is doing that, but I don't foresee it. So I still think there's that possibility he's going to drop one and then drop one. Obviously, he's not going to keep them forever, but and if The Rock and Roman really is going to happen, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Cody to win and go against Roman.
Yeah. Joe, what do you think? How would you take the belts off?
Well, there was a couple different scenarios on that, but I think they really dropped the ball with Austin Theory as the Money in the Bank winner. He could have came out closer to the castle like they were talking about, in him cashing in, and Drew cashing in on one of the championships and Drew taking it. That was one of the theories. And then obviously we've seen how that worked out. It didn't work out too well for either one of them. And then they were talking about Triple H coming out telling Roman that, hey, that you're not on Raw, you're always on SmackDown. You need to make a decision. Are you going to be on Raw and SmackDown? And if Roman says no, I'm just going to be strictly SmackDown, then they take the title away from him. And at day one was supposed to be for that championship. It still can work out that way, and then they just make the Rumble match for one of the championships that Roman doesn't want to have. That way, Roman still goes in hot. He didn't lose a championship, and they still get everything that they want. But somehow, some way, you got to get off one of those championships off, because Triple H has been saying, "I want two champions at WrestleMania." Well, how else can you do it? Because you just destroyed the Money in the Bank concept.
Yep.
And you don't want Roman losing, especially if they are going with that Rock Roman WrestleMania match. You want Roman to go in there as hot as possible and do what he has to do and at WrestleMania. So I think the best theory is to do exactly what they wanted to do for day one. Just say, Roman, you're on one program a lot more than you are on the other one. You are the undisputed champion. You need to make a decision. Are you going to be on both shows, or are you going to be on one? And when Roman says, I'm just going to be on this show, okay, then I need that championship.
Well, do you think they would have to do it with the Usos too? I mean, because right now,
well, the Usos are actually they've been on both shows more than Roman has.
But yeah, I think
But there's not enough tag teams to have separate championships. That is one thing that now.
You guys are about my age. You guys are older historical fans as like I am. What do you guys think about Survivor Series this year? Because I know I'm kind of excited to see what happens this year at Survivor Series.
I am for the first time in a while. I like that
war I love the War Games concept. The only thing that would make it better is if they decide to have NXT invade somehow and become part of it. Thomas, what do you think?
Well, I'm excited for Survivor Series War Games.
Yeah.
Maybe the fifth man for Drew and Sheamus could be Braun Breaker.
Maybe. Ooh, that would be something.
And maybe he pins Roman.
Maybe.
There you go. I like that. I like that idea.
But in reality, I think Sammy's taking the fall, and that's how they kick him out of the bloodline.
Yeah, he's gonna take the fall. I think.
I read somewhere.
Give Sammy the championship, man. I think that would be the most.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah, considering I did see that too.
Win the
I think that would be absolutely awesome. Then Sammy could be the guy that destroys the bloodline in a sense, because who right now, as we've talked, who can destroy the bloodline? He's already beaten Drew. Other than Cross, I think Cross can do it. But I mean, technically, Roman's run through everybody in 2 years.
Yeah, they were talking about Sammy, win the Rumble and then beat Roman at WrestleMania. So I don't know. That would be
that would be
that's a shock value right there. I would tune in. I mean, I'll tune into WrestleMania anyways because it's WrestleMania. But I mean,
that would be.
When was the last time you had a shock value at WrestleMania? It was like, oh my God, can you believe this happened? And I mean, I've been watching WrestleMania since day one. So.
But the thing is, though, if Sammy breaks away from the bloodline, honestly, how over is he going to be? He's over right now because it's with the bloodline and making everybody laugh and making all these silly little jokes. Once he breaks away,
Sammy and KO takes the tag team titles, which they're talking about KO teaming up with Sammy down the road again. So that could be.
Or you got KO in Sammy's corner, and KO pushes him to the victory, and then KO turns on him like he should anyway, and then takes the belts off Sammy, which is always a possibility. So. I mean, there's a lot of different angles to go there, but I know we got to move on to our Mount Rushmore, right, BB?
Yeah, we could do the Mount Rushmore. This week we're taking 4. Doesn't have to be any specific order. It has to be 4, as Will has stated before. Mount Rushmore of Intercontinental Champions. Thomas, since you're the guest, I'll let you start first. Who are your top four IC title holders?
Thanks for the pressure. So I'm going with Brett, Sean, Mr. Perfect, and Razor.
Joe?
I was close to that. I mean, Razor's on the top of the list no matter what it is. And he's number one, period. I go Razor, Sean, Brett, and I went with Jericho, actually.
It's a good list. Can't go wrong.
You know, just like they stated, Razor Ramon, greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. No matter what. No matter what. I mean, it's just Razor's number one. My list is a little different, and I can tell you why. My number two was Sean, of course, because, that belt really made him and really pushed him and really got him away from being with Marty and people looking at him as a tag team wrestler and made him a mainstream singles competitor. My third choice out of the four, different than those guys, I chose the Ultimate Warrior. And I'll tell you why I think he was one of the top greatest Intercontinental champions of all time, because, you had the company that Hogan built, basically, and the Hogan company is what the WWF was at that time. And, to have another main character and another main belt, it really pushed this whole idea that there was somebody out there that could be as big or bigger than Hogan at the time. And by doing so, they put the Intercontinental title on Warrior, and what a big entity he became. He became the one character that was just as big as Hogan. And, Macho Man there for a year, 88 into 89, was probably as big of a character as Hogan at the time, because that was his year with the belt and he was believable. But really, after Macho dropped that belt to Hogan, that character wasn't as big and strong as the Hulk Hogan character. But then during that same time period, late 88, early 89, all of 89, and then all of 90, you got to think about it. April of 90, he goes in against Hogan, wins the belt. This guy's been running number two to Hogan all this time, but they've really been kind of running head and head. So I would say Warrior really, that Intercontinental belt really helped make the Warrior. The Warrior didn't make the Intercontinental belt. That belt made him. Yep. And it made a very believable character. And that's why I would put him on the list. And number four is kind of an obvious one, just because of the length of time and the character that, really came out to be with the Intercontinental title. I would say the Honky Tonk Man, just because of the time period, the classic old wrestling. Jericho, I know a lot of people think Jericho is one of the greatest Intercontinental champions, but the issue that I have with Jericho, and the reason he's not in my top four, not that there's anything wrong with him being in others, is because he won a lot of those titles during a time period where belts changed hands every week or every other week or every pay-per-view. These guys that we're talking about, they held titles for a year plus at a time, and you didn't see title changes on Monday Night Raw. You didn't see them on Superstars. You didn't see them on the weekend shows. It was a big, big, big deal when somebody became a new champion. It was almost like a football team becoming Super Bowl champions when a title changed hands back in the day. And that's why Razor Ramon, I think, to me and a lot of people my age and maybe just under my age, will always be regarded as the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time, because he's the first one to ever win it 4 times during a time period where titles didn't change hands like that. So that's my 4. I'm always open to talk about it, always open to debate it. I'm open to comments, all that good stuff. But those are really my 4. And, regardless, number 1 will always be Razor Ramon. Big B, what do you got?
Yeah, for me, I mean, Razor and Shawn Michaels definitely 1, 2. We talked about this, 3 weeks ago, and because of the show being postponed and stuff, I kept thinking about it. I gotta go Warrior at number 3. I like that. and then I had a toss up between Honky Tonk Man and Bret Hart. Being the legacy, or not Bret Hart. Well, he was up there too, but Mr. Perfect. I gotta go Mr. Perfect number 4. I mean, hockey, yeah, he had it for a while, and Bret Hart, kind of was like Shawn Michaels. It took him out of the tag team relevancy, because that's all we knew him as.
You know why I didn't pick Bret Hart as one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions, Big B?
You don't like him.
No, I love Bret Hart. It's my favorite.
Oh no, you do love Bret Hart. That's
my
right.
favorite wrestler of all time. But the reason I didn't is because he's the only other wrestler besides Hogan at the time to become a 5-time WWF champion with the Winged Eagle. Yeah. And, that really, to me, was kind of his belt. It was Hogan's there for a while. Yep. And then Hogan was gone. It was Bret's. And, Bret winning it. And he was the only 5-time WWF champion at the time, besides Hogan. So it was only Hogan and Hart. So really, they were both up there in that, really elite category, those two guys were. Now, of course, later on, when titles started changing hands like crazy and the Winged Eagle was gone, there were people that become 5-time, 10-time, 12-time, 16-time champions. But, during that time where belts didn't really change, to be a 5-time champion really put you in an elite crowd. So that's why I didn't pick him as an Intercontinental champion, because he would be probably the second greatest of all time with the Winged Eagle world champion. So, but that's debate for another day. But that's why.
So we go to comments here. Kevin, he says Razor, Bret, Honky, and The Rock. Randy Cox, our very own Dragon Viper, says Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Billy Gunn, and Mr. Perfect. Robert is saying Razor, Goldust, Jericho, and The Warrior. And then Roger Cooper, Razor, Shawn, Bret, Eddie.
So
I can't believe somebody put Billy Gunn in there. Randy
we're all pretty close though.
Goldust and Billy Gunn are the 2-eye question. I don't know. I mean, they're all pretty close, all good champions. But the 2 I would kind of shake my head on is Goldust and Billy Gunn.
Yeah.
Well, see, we didn't even mention Jeff Jarrett.
And things like that.
Jarrett. I mean, there's definitely a lot out there. So,
but I'm like Will too. I'm like Will.
We talked about how
I liked it when the championships didn't change hands all the time. So when you did win that, say, Intercontinental title for 3 times, like Razor did, that was monumental because it was hard to do, in the time like that. And then we got into television ratings and things like that, and championships bouncing all over the place week in and week out. I mean, look how many times the WWE Tag Team Championships changed hand on Monday Night Raw almost every other week, and things like that. So those tiers, when those guys held those championships, they meant something. They and you got to figure too, when Hogan was on one, because WWE used to run like 3 house shows, so you had the Hogan on one, everybody wanted to be on that, but when you couldn't be on that, you wanted to be on the one with the Intercontinental Champion, because that was the main event match, which means you were making main event money and things like that. So
that's some history. That's some history right there. That's some wrestling history right there. A lot of people don't think about that.
I mean, Randy's asking why I questioned Billy Gunn. I mean, he only had it once, and
it's almost a forgettable run too.
And I don't think it was that long of a run.
It is pretty forgettable.
I mean, you could throw Shamrock on there. I thought Shamrock had a better run than what.
Shamrock had a way better run.
I'm just trying to see if I can find how long. But anyways, let's move into our Survivor or history moment, which is Survivor Series 88 and 89. I'll let you take care of this because this is your wheelhouse. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, I'll try to make it quick because we're running out of time very quickly. But,
we got time.
It's November. We want to talk about Survivor Series. Growing up as a kid, Survivor Series was such a big event, such a big deal. You saw so many different characters, so much talent. And, you're talking about a time where WWF was going live on pay-per-view on Thanksgiving, and nobody had really even heard of that. That was just kind of unheard of and such a big deal. But going into Survivor Series 88, this is the original VHS tape from 1988. This is from my personal collection from when I was a kid. Super exciting. the main event there featuring the Macho Man and Hulk Hogan as co-captains, because even though every year they had captains of teams, Macho was the champion and Hogan was the big name. So you really couldn't say that Macho was the captain, and you couldn't say Hogan was the captain because Macho was the champ. So, but on the main event team, you had the Macho Man, Randy Savage, Hogan, Hercules, Coco Beware, Hillbilly Jim. The list of characters right there is incredible, against the Big Boss Man and Akeem, which were very believable opponents back then to beat Hogan and Savage's team. The Million Dollar Man was also on his team. King Haku was on there. The Red Rooster. Listen to the names and the talent in the matches. The next match, team co-captains Brutus Beefcake and the Ultimate Warrior. Teammates Blue Blazer, which was Owen Hart, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, and Sam Houston, against team co-captains the Honky Tonk Man and Outlaw Ron Bass. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Bad News Brown, and Danny Davis. What a great match that was. Next match, Jake the Snake Roberts and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That's co-captains Tito Santana, B. Brian Blair, Ken Patera, against team co-captains Andre the Giant and Dino Bravo, Ravishing Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, and Harley Race. Listen to all these Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Next match, team co-captains The Powers of Pain, Warlord and Barbarian, the Hart Foundation, Brett and Jim Neidhart, the Bulldogs, the Rockers, the Young Stallions, against Demolition, the Fabulous Rougeaus, the Bolsheviks, the Brainbusters, the Conquistadors. Classic wrestling at its absolute best. If you want to go back and watch some classic stuff, here it is. Incredible, absolute fun-filled. It's on Peacock. It's on the network. It's on all that stuff. And let me tell you, a lot of times, too, at these pay-per-views, I don't know, how many times this has been discussed, but say Hogan and some of the guys would be the main event match, they would actually move the main event match up in the night to be like the third match of the night, so Hogan could make it back to the hotel in time to order room service before it closed. That's a true story. So
Yeah.
but those are great. Then you got Survivor Series '89, the original VHS tape, Coliseum video. Another great one. The Hulkamaniacs, Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake, Roberts, and Demolition versus the Million Dollar Team. Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase, Zeus, and the Power of Pain, Warlord and Barbarian. Another match, the Ultimate Warriors, which this is featured as the main event. It was not the final match of the night. Just citing what I just said about Hogan, the main event of the night was actually the Ultimate Warriors versus the Heenan family. Ultimate Warrior, the Rockers, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart versus the Heenan family, Andre the Giant, Haku, and the Brainbusters. And correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas, Tully Blanchard didn't wrestle in that match because Bobby Heenan actually took Tully's place.
Correct, because Tully got fired for failing a drug test.
Rowdy Roddy Piper, the Bushwhackers, and Superfly Jimmy Snuka versus the Rude, Ravishing Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, and the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. Yet another match called the 4x4s, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Hercules, Rugged Ronnie Garvin, and Bret Hart versus the Macho King Randy Savage, Dino Bravo, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and the Widowmaker. Again, listen to the list of Hall of Famers and world champions here. What a great time in wrestling. Another match on here, the Dream Team. You guys might remember the famous promo. I can't remember if it was this one or the 4th annual Survivor Series, but they asked Dusty Rhodes what he was thankful for that Thanksgiving, and he said, "My polka dots." And wow.
I think it was that one, 89.
89?
Yeah, so, he was already gone by 91, I believe.
No, he was there at 90 because remember, that's when they debuted The Undertaker.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dream Team, Dusty Rhodes, Tito Santana, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and Red Rooster versus Big Boss Man, Honky Tonk Man, Akeem, and Rick Martel. These guys, I think a lot of these guys we look back on and we don't give them enough credit. But just listening to some of these names, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Tito Santana, they're not really given the credit these days that they really deserve. But look at all these events that they were just all over, and they were such huge stars. Big Boss Man, definitely doesn't get enough credit. Huge star.
Red Rooster.
Hakeem Red Rooster, Terry Taylor, absolutely, Rick Martel. And there was one too. I think I covered this in my other chat. I don't think I covered it in this one, but there was one. I think it was '88. It was Paul Roma, and he was standing in the ring facing the corner, and literally leaped from in the ring facing the corner directly up onto the top turnbuckle without grabbing the ropes or anything else. What an act of athleticism, incredible athleticism. I believe it was Survivor Series '88 that he was in that happened in. But go back and watch these. Enjoy some classic wrestling. It's totally different than anything you'll watch today. I guarantee it. It's fun. It's exciting. It's characters. The commentary is spot on. It's great stuff. I would highly recommend going back, checking out Survivor Series '89 or Survivor Series '88. And that
The
is
only thing I would have switched on that was put Brett on Warriors team instead of the other one. I can't figure out why, because they were still the Hart Foundation, why they weren't on the same team.
They broke them up that year. And that year they also lost. They lost at SummerSlam that year to the Brainbusters, and they broke them up that year.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember. I remember them losing, yes, but I don't remember them.
And then they ended up putting them right back together on television, and then right back around at SummerSlam, they ended up winning the tag titles again.
Yeah, the following year. Okay, yep.
The Brainbusters were done at the Survivor Series anyway, because they had a contract to go back to Crockett, but with Tully failing that drug test, they rescinded the offer to Tully's, but Arn went solo because they were going to reform the Horsemen.
Yeah, and you remember Arn did a couple house shows, and Bobby filled in for Tully because of that, so they can finish out their contract commitments there.
Yep,
Bobby filling in. That's always classic.
Bobby was a good wrestler back in the day in the 80s. Back in the AWA days, Bobby could go with some of the guys.
Watching Bobby in that Survivor Series in '89, watching him in that, I mean, of course it was comical because he was going against the Ultimate Warrior, but watching him jump in there and kick Marty Jannetty in the stomach and jumping up and down and jumping on him, it was actually really good. It was a whole lot better than you would think. So again, I would highly recommend going back and watching it.
Yeah. So Kevin's chiming in saying Terry Taylor was a great talent. Randy Cox, I love the older stuff better. Yeah, I mean, some of the older stuff is definitely a lot better.
Well, Survivor Series, that's what it was all about. And then when they changed it just got bad.
Yeah, and Robert, I can't remember which Survivor Series it is, but it's the one where Mr. Perfect closes the match with the beautiful executed perfect plex to Superfly. That was amazing close to the match. The perfect plex.
'89.
All right. It didn't even have to take the historian that long. So
it took you longer to get that question out than it was for the answer.
Yeah, no kidding. Exactly. So I don't think
those were the great times as a kid for me, man. Was those Survivor Series? You're seeing great feuds that are culminating coming out because you only had 4 big pay-per-views that year, and Saturday Night Main Event in between there. So. Look at '89. '88. We're coming out of. We're setting up for Hogan and Savage go at it, and the Twin Towers were involved in that on Saturday Night's Main Event. I mean, so the list of Hall of Famers, legends in that. I mean, and the feuds that would come out of that. Survivor Series set that up.
Kev Buckler made a great point there. Bobby Heenan never sucked at anything.
No.
Nope.
God rest Heenan, man.
And by the way, today's the Macho Man's 70th birthday today.
Yeah, I covered that a couple times during my live tonight.
Yeah, 70th. Wow.
You believe that?
DDP, man, he's been all over today. He's a big advocate for Savage because Savage helped make his career. And the videos that he's posted today about Savage and Savage taking the diamond cutter and putting him over, he said that was the greatest thing. And then speaking of Survivor Series and Thanksgiving's, Paige calling Savage on Thanksgiving and telling him thank you for everything, and Savage calling him back, breaking down, saying nobody's ever called me to say thank you for anything like that. So that meant a lot to both of those men.
You know what's crazy, and I mean this with nothing but respect, but there's certain events in your life that you'll just always remember where you were when they happened and all that stuff. You know, I think about like where I was when I heard the Macho Man passed away. You know, and I think about where I was when I heard the Ultimate Warrior passed away, especially after that big Hall of Fame weekend. And you know, everybody always talks about they remember where they were when they heard 9/11 was happening.
Yep.
You know, and again, there's obviously no comparison between those events, but it's just a you know kind of a metaphor of you always remember where you were when certain things happen. Like I
Yep.
specifically remember where I was when I heard the Macho Man passed away. You know, and that's how big of an impact he had as you know a character and as a person in so many people's lives. You know, I mean, I think probably I would say 9 out of 10 people can remember where they were when they heard Macho passed away. You know,
Yeah, and I tell you, last year I was on vacation down in Sarasota area there, and I went by the place where he died at, and where he, his last spot was. And to this day, there's still people that go out there and put gifts and teddy bears and things like that around that tree to this
Wow.
day for him. Um,
Oh,
we pulled over into the church area, and I'm like, I think this tree is where it was happened at. And sure enough, as I looked more, you could see it. I mean, people still put stuff out there to this day for him.
Well, that's good. That's
and
good.
that was 11 years ago. It happened
Yep.
in 2011.
Wow. Yeah. So I did want to touch on one rumor. I don't know if it happened, but Triple H or HBK was expected to announce a new match concept called the Iron Survivor Challenge
They
tonight
did.
on NXT. Did anybody know if that happened and what
It,
it was?
it did happen. It's going to be
Oh.
5 competitors, men and women. It's going to be whoever gains the most pinfalls, submissions, or disqualifications in 25 minutes. They're going to get a point for that.
Okay.
Almost like Gauntlet for the Gold type thing back in the day when, say, the Intercontinental title was on the line. Whoever was the last champion held it, type thing. But yeah, that's what it's going to be called.
Okay. Cool. So
I don't
almost
know.
was like
I
Stokely
haven't
89.
watched it. I just seen heard about it though.
okay. Gotcha. So
I don't know if they're. I'm assuming they're probably going to get a championship opportunity down the line somewhere like that. Sets it up.
all right. Yeah, I was wondering if that happened. I was watching a little bit of it. Well, with that being said, guys, well, you got anything else you want to cover quick? We got a few minutes left, or maybe we can let Tom Burnett tell us a little bit about Thoughts Count Anywhere.
We'll definitely let Thomas talk, but I do want to mention next Tuesday, it's Thanksgiving week. We will not be having a live cell next week because it's Thanksgiving week. However, we will be having a very, very special episode of Tuesday Night Mania. It will be our in memoriam or in remembrance episode of Tuesday Night Mania. We're going to talk about things we're thankful for, and we're going to talk about some of the wrestlers that we've lost this year and in the past years and stuff like that. So next week's episode will be a little different than what we normally do here and breaking down all these things. We're going to really try to, deep dive into some of these wrestlers' lives and careers and some of them that have really touched us a whole lot in our lives. So that'll be next Tuesday night's episode of Tuesday Night Mania, 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to dig into that really special episode for us. I know, behind the scenes, myself and the guys have been discussing it and some things that we want to really get out there and talk about. And we hope to see everybody tune in for that and check us out. So other than that, thanks to everybody at TRC. Thanks to Crispy Bacon behind the scenes. Thanks to Ace. I know he's got a lot going on.
Yep.
Huge shout out to Thomas for joining us this week. It's always fun and exciting when I'll say something or misquote something, and Thomas will jump in the chat and tell me that I'm wrong. So that's always exciting. But we're glad you're here, Thomas, and glad you came to help us out. And huge shout out to Joe. Joe's got a lot of great things going on right now in his life. And huge shout out to Big B, too, man. I think it was a hell of a good show. So, Thomas, if you want to kind of tell us about Thoughts Count Anywhere, I shout them out all the time.
Yep, we do.
You want to kind of go into any of that stuff?
Yeah, just tune into this Saturday, TCA, Thoughts Count Anywhere. 9 a.m. is Pacific, 12 Eastern. We may or may not have a very special guest. You got to tune in to find out.
Oh, what a teaser. Now, definitely check those guys out. I love their setup. I wish we were able to do that, but I know we all live in different states. But maybe one of these days we'll have to get some travel arrangements and go somewhere. But
Will and I are 20 minutes away. We can make that happen.
Yeah.
yeah, that is true. So, well, with that being said, check out Coast to Coast all week long. Got different shows. Check out Thoughts Count Anywhere. Top Row Collectibles does broadcast them. So, with that being said, guys, see you next week for our very special tribute show for the wrestlers we lost. So, have a good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.